Hey there, welcome to Jackie Talks Horror. I'm Jackie, and today I'm doing a preview of the upcoming darkly comic gothic horror film, Victorian Psycho, which premiered at Cannes in late May and is getting a limited release on the 25th of September this year, 2026. Now that's in the US, so do keep an eye on release dates in your country and for any wider releases. Just a quick heads up, I'll be using images and trailers from the film in this video, and there'll be links to any trailers and articles I use in the description down below. So this film caught my attention because of Maika Monroe's performance in the trailer. More about that later. And I've always loved the look and feel of gothic horror films. But first, let's take a look at why people are talking about it. The IMDb plot synopsis reads, in 1858, an eccentric young governess, Winfred Nottie, arrives at the remote gothic manor, Ensa House. As Winfred assimilates, staff begin to inexplicably disappear, and the owners wonder if something is amiss about this new governess. This certainly sounds a sort of gothic horror setup that fans have enjoyed for generations, but with a much darker and more twisted edge. Next, let's have a look at the cast and crew. The film is directed by Zachary Wigan, and the screenplay is written by Virginia Fato, who wrote the novel this film is based upon. Now that's a good sign, as it means the author has had a direct hand in bringing the story to the screen, and so hopefully preserving what made the book so popular in the first place. One of the talking points of the film is that it has a really strong cast. Leading the way as Winfred Nottie, we have the fabulous Maika Monroe, who is quickly building a reputation as one of horror's most reliable leading actresses for sure. We then have the owners of the manor, Mr. and Mrs. Pound, played by the awesome Jason Isaacs and the incredible Ruth Wilson respectively. And we also have Thomasin McKenzie in the cast, who really impressed me with her role in Last Night in Soho. And even as you go down the cast list, the others have really impressive filmographies, even the young actors, which bodes well for the quality of acting in the film. Which cast member are you most excited to see in this? I thought Maika Monroe was awesome in It Follows, and so excited to see her in this. And for the follow-up They Follow, which, by all accounts, should be starting production this summer. Now, as for the source material, I haven't read the novel yet, but it seems to have built up quite a following amongst horror readers, thanks to its blend of gothic horror, dark humour, and a thoroughly unhinged lead character. Although some readers have found it a little too over the top for their tastes. That said, it's certainly a book that people appear to have strong opinions about, which is a good sign when it comes to horror. Have you read the novel? Did it work for you? So next, let's take a quick look behind the scenes. The film had an interesting development history. A24 was originally attached as the North American distributor, but shortly after Margaret Qualley left the project, they dropped out, with Bleecker Street gaining those distribution rights. Director Zachary Wigan has also given some insight into the mindset behind the film. In an interview with Cine Europa, he explained, I am interested in the most intense, extreme and complete expression of psychology and emotion that can be achieved on the screen, and genre enables me to pursue this through unusual images and unusual sounds, which certainly seems to fit what we've seen so far, with the teaser focusing on an increasingly unstable governess and leaning heavily into both psychological horror and dark comedy. And if the score in the trailer doesn't impress you, signs are the score in the movie itself is going to be amazing. In that same interview with Cine Europa, speaking about his collaboration on the film with Ariel Marks, who also scored his previous one, Sanctuary, Wigan said, what I told Ariel at the beginning was that this should be a demented film, so the score needs to be as demented as possible. And finally, the film also premiered at Cannes earlier this year in the Uncertain Regard section, where it received a strong audience response, including a standing ovation and early praise for Maika Monroe's performance and the film's darkly comic tone. So far everything seems to be pointing towards a stylish, darkly funny and slightly unhinged gothic horror film, which sounds pretty good to me. So next, let's move on to the part that first caught my eye. It was the teaser, and particularly Maika Monroe's performance in it, that first got my attention. I'm used to seeing her in fairly straightforward roles, but she seems to be having so much fun with this one. I loved her facial expressions and energy throughout the teaser, and she really appears to be throwing herself into the role. The one thing I wasn't entirely convinced by was her character's accent. But if she's as entertaining in the full film as she looks in the trailer, I suspect that will end up being a minor issue. If you've seen the teaser, what did you think of Maika Monroe's performance? Did the accent work for you, or did it stand out a bit? The teaser itself is full of frenetic visuals and hints of dark comedy, culminating in a wonderfully twisted final moment that reminds us this story isn't taking itself too seriously despite the gothic setting. The music used in the trailer appears to be from Die Spitz and feels like a surprisingly perfect fit. On paper, metal music and Victorian imagery don't sound like they should work together, but here they complement each other remarkably well. If the finished film can match the energy of this teaser, and from what I've heard about the novel, I think we could be in for a very wild ride indeed. My biggest concern going into Victorian Psycho is whether it can successfully balance its dark comedy with its horror elements. That kind of tonal tightrope can be really effective when it lands, but it can also risk feeling uneven if it lands too far in either direction. Do you think this kind of dark comedy and horror mix usually works, or is it a hard balance to get right? There is definitely a lot working in its favour though, from the strong cast to the gothic setting, and the clear confidence in its tone. It feels like a film that's aiming to be playful, unsettling, and a bit unhinged all at once. It's also interesting to see how the film's journey shifted behind the scenes, with A24 originally attached before Bleecker Street ultimately took over distribution. Regardless of how that came about, the cast is undeniably strong and feels like one of the film's biggest assets. In all, I'd say Victorian Psycho has a solid chance of becoming one of those horror releases that builds momentum through word of mouth, especially if the early canned responses carry over into good reactions from its limited release, which could then hopefully lead to a wider one. All it really needs now is to stick the landing when it counts. So that's all for this video. This is definitely going to be one to watch out for if you're a fan of gothic or period horror. Are you looking forward to Victorian Psycho? I know I am. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And remember, this is only my opinion of the film. It'd be a boring old world if we all like the same things. Thanks so much for watching. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe and click that bell. I'd love to have you back with me for more. This is Jackie signing off. Take care and see you next time.